process. Recording pending, excellent, recording has started, fantastic. Okay, I'll share my screen and we will get going. What I will probably do is mute everyone for now. Then questions, there'll be plenty of time for that, and as we kind of go through, that's fine. If I mute everybody, if you just remember to unmute yourself if you want to talk, then we can certainly hear you. This isn't us saying, please don't speak to us. It's just to kind of help you with any background noise and people that you might have around you. But please do feel free to unmute yourself if you want to ask any questions, or drop them in the chat as well if you want us to pick them up towards the end. That's absolutely fine. Right, there's some more people coming. There we go. That should be dawning as well. Right, let me share the screen. Wonderful. Ren, is that all up and good? You need to unmute yourself, remember.
It is. I can see it perfectly. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Great, super.
Perfect.
Great. So welcome. Thank you very much for attending our webinar this afternoon. Are you keeping up with your cybersecurity obligations? So we did try to run this webinar a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, we had some technical issues. So apologies if you were in that last webinar, and thank you very much for coming back. Welcome to those that have joined us since. You're most welcome. So what to expect from this webinar? So we've got myself, Leanne Hawkins, and Ren from Inform You Solutions here as well. So Ren's going to cover a bit about your cybersecurity obligations, and then explore the maintenance and information assurance register. Ren, anything you want to kind of cover there? Is that enough at the moment?
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah.
Fine. And then I'll come back a bit later and I'll tell you a bit about the public sector funded project that we've run over the last year, which has delivered a digital data protection impact assessment that's been designed by IG experts, absolutely, but focused entirely at the needs of non-IG experts to help them and kind of empower the wider business to take responsibility for their DPIAs and their information sharing agreements as well. Questions are great. Please do ask away. Either unmute yourself and ask questions as we go, or feel free to drop them in chat and we can pick them up at various points as well. So, as I say, myself, Dr. Leanne Hawkins, I'm Chief Operating Officer of Coalescent Limited, and I'll come back and speak a bit more later about the digital DPIA solution that we have. And also on the call, Ren, I will let you introduce yourself and if you want to take over the screen sharing.
Thank you. So I'll just share my screen. And then hopefully, Leanne, you can see this slide with Inform You on it.
I certainly can.
Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Hello. So I'm Reynold, or Ren Lemming. Sometimes on webinars, I wear two hats. Sometimes I'll wear my hat as chair of the Information and Records Management Society, and sometimes, like today, as a director of Inform You Solutions. So here's a picture of me with my hair before I got it cut. And I've just got one slide here where I'm going to explain a little bit about what Inform You do, and there are four big areas that we provide services and solutions in. But there's a sort of golden thread that hangs all that together, which is fundamentally our mission is to help people with modern ways of working, how they can make best use of place and space, and optimal business practice, including the handling of data and information. So we provide facilities management services, for example, helping with office moves and changes. We provide records management and information governance consultancy. We provide a number of software tools, including the information assurance register we're going to talk about today, but we're also a partner to deliver Dapian. And last but not least, and coming soon, because so much of an organization's CSR or social impact strategy relates to facilities and relates to data, we're going to be launching a new service soon to help people on their social impact journey. which includes accreditation to a specific standard for that. So, moving on, this slide explains the architecture of an information assurance register. But first of all, just a word or two about why that's important in terms of cybersecurity. So what we really want to know for our information, be that physical records, be that digital records, be that file content, or be that system data, is what security classification it is, how well it's protected, where the risks are, etc. So the information assurance register system is a way of doing that. And that can help, for example, with producing the information you need for compliance with certain parts of the GDPR or the Data Protection Act 2018, but also, for example, if you produce information to support accreditation with standards such as the ISO 27001 Information Security Management System standard. So we started off by calling it an information asset register, where we said, let's replace people holding those inventories and profiles of their information sets in spreadsheets. Let's give them a database tool to do so. But over time, I realized that actually it's a great platform to do a bit more than that. So you can not only record and create an inventory of the information you've held over time, but also add to that how you've handled that information and how you've governed that information over time, so that you can create this complete holistic picture of your information assurance. And therefore we've swapped the word asset for assurance in IAR, and we started calling it an information assurance register. So what sort of objects do you store in the system? If we look in the middle, we've got various record types that we can add. Now, I'll say at the start, this is all just example. The system is a blank canvas in many areas for configuration. So you can call your record types what you like, every field in the system you can call what you like, every drop-down list in the system would be yours. But by way of example, you can include your information assets, be those physical record sets or be that digital content. But also when we're looking at how information is handled, you can also record information about the systems that processes that data, about the equipment, like document scanners or servers, etc., that processes that information. And certainly having a register of your assets, systems, equipment, etc., is part of your evidence package for ISO 27001. But then you can also record information about how you've governed those data sets and those information sets. So for example, you can record the summary of your DPIAs, your data protection impact assessments. You can record risks that have occurred over time. You could, if you wish, record information about the information access requests you've processed over time, such as data subject access requests, environmental information or freedom of information requests. You can record the contracts and agreements that you have in place when you're sharing or providing data with third parties. And you can also record the governance documentation that you have in place, your policies, procedures, and what they apply to over time. So those are the examples of the kind of record types that you'd have in the system. But then if we go to the top, you can also have other entities which are collections, which group these things together for specific purposes, but around which you may wish to add further profile information. So those could be, for example, corporate things like working from home, and what data and governance do I have in place regarding that? Or they could relate to business processes. So for example, if you want to use this system to produce your records of processing activity for GDPR Article 30 and certain parts of the Data Protection Act 2018 compliance, where you're clustering information around the individual purposes of processing personal data, you can do that as a collection entity. Or if it relates to soft assets and physical stuff, which could be, for example, CCTV cameras, document scanners, etc., or even archive boxes and filing cabinets, you can cluster those around a physical location. And then just nipping down to the bottom, against the assets and other record types that you put in the system, you can tag them against retention and review policies. And based on review cycles, you can create alerts and tasks for users to go and look at stuff and say, it's time perhaps to do a disposal review on that data set. And then the activities you perform, the business events that are undertaken relating to any in the system, you can record for audit trail purposes in the action logs relating to, for example, an information asset. So I'm going to show a couple of views of how that collation of information might work. And the one we've got here, if we look at the top of this view, it says there's a collection, which is the corporate governance for working from home. And then below, it's got everything that we've clustered there that relates to how we practice of working from home and govern working from home. So, for example, we've got an agreement with a company called Acme FM, who surveyed our home working arrangements. We've then got a data protection impact assessment that we performed on the process of retrieving physical records from our offsite archive store to home locations when people were working from home. We've got some electronic data sets. So we've got the actual home working survey data that Acme FM performed, and we've also got our bring your own device inventory data. And then last but not least, we've got some governance documentation, which is our home working policy, our bring your own device policy updated following COVID, and our bring your own device registration procedure. So as you see, you can cluster together information, how it was handled, how it was governed for a particular theme over time. The next slide shows another example view of this. And this is where, if we look at the top left, the collective entity here is a ROPA process, a record of processing activities process. So there's a business process for handling supplier correspondence. And what we've collated around this, and behind each of these in the system, is the further data that we'll have a look at a few screens at that profiles these individual items. But you've got an agreement with Acme Law, who handle insolvency and bad debt cases relating to suppliers. We stated where the data is held in which software application. So it's the supplier module of our ERP system. We've done a data protection impact assessment on this, and we've got the summary information there for the supplier correspondence process. We've got some electronic data sets around stuff stored in CRM data in the ERP system, scanned images of supplier correspondence we still receive in paper. We've got a piece of equipment, the document scanner the finance team uses to process any incoming paper correspondence. We've got some physical records, paper files of supplier correspondence, and our legal case files for credit control scenarios. And then going to the right, we've got a policy example, we've got the procedure for the finance team document scanning. And last but not least, there's a risk that we've identified and we've profiled relating to this business process, which relates to the misfiling of scanned originals. So here again, using these objects we've set up in the system, we can create this holistic view of the information involved, how it was handled, how it was governed for a business process over time. So looking in a bit more detail, and the rest of the slideshow really is just a set of screenshots from different parts of the systems. I mentioned earlier that you can tag things like information assets to retention policies. So in the background of the system, you set up your retention schedule. So not only can you link that to an information asset, but also you can actually manage that documentation, as it were, rather than in Word documents or spreadsheets, in a database. So this is an example screenshot here looking at one particular policy, which is at the top called financial transactions. And then if we drop down to the next section in yellow, you can have multiple jurisdictions. This one's for the UK. Now, the next bit is the system also maintains a business classification scheme, a hierarchy of your business functions and sub-activities and sub-sub-activities, if you wish. And this is the way when you add an asset that you assign the retention policy. So when you add an information asset to the system, you say which area of the business classification scheme it fits in, and then because the retention policies are mapped to the BCS, you can inherit one or more relevant retention policies. So what we're doing is automating the process for those information asset owners out there who are responsible for maintaining the inventory data. We're automating the process of helping to prompt them as to which the best policy might be. Then below, in informative fields, it's the information that someone like an information asset owner could look up for a particular asset. So this is a policy that applies to accounts payable and receivable records. The actual policy is financial year is plus 6 years, and the default action at the end is destroy.
Ren, your
Now, because we want this system to be... Sorry?
Your
yeah.
5-minute warning.
Thank you. So what we want to do is then have retention cycles. So these are the review cycles. So this one says every year, prompt someone to go and look at the real world data that's out there and based on this policy make a decision. And last but not least, we've got the justification in terms of laws and business rationale as to why this retention policy exists. So we can look back at over time and say not only what retention policies applied to which information at a time, but what was our rationale for it. And that all helps with defensible disposition. So a few more screens. This is an example of one relating to a business process where I might, for example, want to know, have I done a data flow map or not? And if I have, attached video or PDF diagram of it. What's my status on my DPIA? A lot of this screen, because it contains personal data, is the kind of information at a summary level that you want to know about the category of data subjects, the category of personal data, etc., that you'd want to store to be part of your records of processing activity. But as I say, the system's completely flexible and all field names and all drop-down lists are configurable. The next screen is just some examples of information assets. So top left, what you might ask about physical records. What type is it? Where it's stored? Going to the right, that detail for the asset about that personal data and its handling, again, used to support the detail of your records of processing activities, or could be used, in example, generating privacy notices. And at the bottom, because we want to keep the system evergreen, if there's a business event, you can create your own list of action types, whether you've disposed of it, that section of information, whether you shared it, whether you've migrated it, etc. Talking about the handling of information, you can record the information there about the software systems that you've used over time to hold data. So you can see what software was used when. You can actively use it now to manage those supplier and contract and maintenance relationships. And also, similarly for handling the equipment you've used, such as the scanner. So for example, you can say what equipment was used to capture these images at that stage. And then if there was ever a query about that conversion process, you can, because you might have recorded your maintenance history here, you can work out whether or not something to do with scanner maintenance or scanner failure or performance had any impact on something you might be investigating. DPIAs, now the heavy lifting of automating the process is done by Dapian. This system is not trying to do this. It's just trying to say, as a holistic picture of your information assurance, what are the key bits at the end of that process, and maybe a link to the Dapian document would you want to record in the system. Governance documentation, put in your policies, your procedures, your standards, lines, and whatever information is useful to you. One, yes, you've tagged it, for example, to a business process, so it's part of that holistic governance picture, but you can also use it to see when something's up for review, where the master copy is held, where the published copy is held, has training been delivered on it, etc. Risks and incidents, similarly, you might have a system that does the heavy lifting on risk management, on security incident or data breach handling, but similar to the DPIAs, to get that holistic picture, what are the key bits of a summary record that you might want to record in our system? Or if you don't have such an automation system, we can do a little bit of light management to manage things like security incidents through the process. Just a couple more to go. Contracts and agreements. So if you're regularly sharing information, you've got an information sharing agreement, similar to governance documentation, log it here. Or if you're handing data to third parties like marketing or payroll or bureau or financial firms or accountants or lawyers or insurance companies, and you've got a data sharing agreement, again, you can log that here with key details to understand where it is, what its scope of coverage is, etc. So that's the last screenshot. My final slide is pricing. We're going to be transparent about that. In essence, it's 3 levels. The pricing is on an all-inclusive annual basis for cloud hosting, including right to use the software for unlimited users, support, maintenance, and new upgrades. In essence, it's small, medium, large, with a few variations for what sector you're in. So it starts at 3,600 per annum. There are some professional services that will be charged at the start because there's work to be done to sort of import the retention schedules, look at all that asset data that exists, helping you map that into the new fields you might want to use, doing all the importing, as well as creating some bespoke documentation and training. So that, thank you very much, is me. I'm going to return to the meeting and I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Perfectly on time, Ren. Well done. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Right, let me just share my screen. Wonderful. Good. There. Great. Okay, so ahead from Ren. So now we're moving on to the digital DPIA tool, Dapian. This, as I said, was originated out of a public sector collaboration project. All the organisations you see in front of you there, so some kind of big local authorities or groups of local authorities, including the Greater Manchester Lot and London Office of Technology and Innovation, as well as some health partners in the form of the NHS and Chester and Merseyside Health and Care Partnership, all being kind of supported as well by input from the ICO. So the way that this collaboration project sort of worked was Greater Manchester Combined Authority turned up to the collaboration group and said, look, we have this challenge with DPIAs. The heavy lifting of a DPIA at the moment is falling to the kind of central IG team, and they are at capacity and they're also not necessarily the right sort of resource to do that heavy lifting. And can we empower the wider business to take responsibility for their own DPIAs and kind of push that responsibility back to kind of staff members themselves? That generally isn't happening at the moment for a number of reasons, one of which is a lack of awareness of the process. So staff members don't know that they need to do a DPIA and what time and when they would need to do one versus when they wouldn't need to do one. And they're also put off by the complexity of the process. Generally, they see this as maybe a barrier to progress, which of course it's not that, and it's very much an enabler, and that kind of perception needs to change. Also, there was a lack of consistency in the process, not only from one organisation to another, which you would expect, but between one department and another, we saw that there were inconsistencies in terms of process and data capture. So we wanted to introduce some national-wide standards to this process. And then there was the review process. So once you've completed your DPIA and your responsibility to come back at a later point and check that it's still fit for purpose, many organisations admitting that process isn't happening at all, or in as often as it should do. So we needed to make sure that we had those review processes built in as well. So I'm going to just launch into a live demo of the product. Before I do that, I just want to talk to you a little bit more about the different sets of permissions that we have in this product. So it was a 6-month project, came together really fast, co-funded by those originating public sector organisations, and now we have the resulting product, which is rolled out within 21 different organisations in the space of 5 months. So it's scaled really, really quickly. So we have staff members here. They're fairly self-explanatory, designed for your wider cohort of staff, and they are able to complete the screening questions, understand if they need to do a DPIA, and indeed what type of DPIA template would best suit their needs. So whether it be a full template or a CCTV one or something lighter. There's a number of different templates in there that we can direct people to support them in completion of that particular process. They're also able to be collaborative in the way that they produce those assessments. So whether it's because it's just someone else's job to do that bit, or whether it's because they're stuck on a certain bit and they want to kind of ask for some support from some expertise. Moving on then to signatories. So we have a signatory role which is designed for your information asset owners or your IG team with expertise, or anyone responsible for sign-off in this process. Then we have advisory, which covers your DPOs, your core guardians, anyone making recommendations in this process. We have a set of kind of roles and actions and workflow for them. And then finally, third parties. And that's a really specific set of permissions, which allows you to invite people that are not inside your organisation into the Dapian product to support you in the production of your DPIA. Whether that's because you're working with a partner organisation or a supplier or anyone else, the point is that they are not part of your organisation, so you might want to kind of restrict the access that they have to your DPIAs. So, demo time. Okay, Jess, would you mind bringing me down my power cable? I've just noticed that my power is very low. Thank you. So this is the resulting homepage. It's software as a service, so it's entirely web-based. The only requirements for this are that you have access to a modern browser and an internet connection. By modern browser, we generally mean as defined on gov.uk as being supported. So we're here largely to kind of maybe start the process of our DPIA as a staff member. So we will log in and we can select, I'll log myself in as a staff member. And then this here brings me to my dashboard, which essentially shows me everything that is in my world of DPIAs. So things that I've got going on versus things that are my responsibility to review at some point in the future. But let's say we're here to start our DPIA, so we do that by starting our DPIA here. So bear in mind, entirely designed by IG experts, but focused very much at the needs of non-IG experts. So we'll start by naming our DPIA. I use a kind of public sector adult social care example. It's in adult social care, it's use of teams in adult social care, and maybe teams to deliver care and support assessment. There we go. Sponsor, an owner, an IG lead, if we know who that is. So we've named our DPIA. We're now moving on to the screening questions. So this point in the process was where the ICO really helped us to shape what these questions should be. And indeed, we looked at all of the templates that we had coming in from the collaborating organisations to kind of derive a best practice example. The other key feature of this is that you changed the language that was being used to make it as understandable as possible for non-IG experts. Wherever we felt like there warranted some additional explanation, we implemented these green text boxes to provide that expertise on the shoulders of non-experts. So I'm going to quickly run through these 13 questions, really randomly. I don't even know if this combination is possible. And at the end of the process, it will tell me if it thinks I need to complete a DPIA. And in this case, it's suggesting that the full DPIA template is what is the best next step for me. If it said that it didn't think I needed to do a DPIA, it suggests you go off and have a conversation with your IG team to check that was indeed the right response. And if it was great, we've recorded that as the kind of outcome. And if it wasn't, you should go on and do a DPIA. You can go on and do that anyway. Setting the scene there a bit, telling me what to expect next in the process. So there's our screening questions. We've started our process of our DPIA and we can revisit them if we wanted to there. But really what we're here to do is to complete that DPIA template. So you add your task, you select which template it is that you're going to complete first, and then you select the person that you want to do the majority or start that process. So you probably is going to be that person, or indeed you could search for someone else to assign that to if it isn't you. So I'll go with me. It's in progress, that's fine as I would expect, and then submit that. So now we have, in addition to our screening questions, we have our new full DPI template here. It's assigned to me, and I need to go in and complete that. So I open my form, which takes me to my standardised, collaborated on by many IG experts now, full DPIA template, which I can go ahead and complete. with all the features that you would expect of a digital form in terms of field validation, so you can't submit incomplete applications. But also here, bearing in mind that some of the users felt that they were off-put by the length of the process, we thought really carefully about how we could keep this template as short as possible. So things like only showing questions when it's necessary. So if you answer no to something like this question, nothing changes. It's only at the point that you say yes, these additional fields unveil themselves. So just small things like that, helping those non-expert users to not feel so intimidated by this process. If anyone wants to, I'm very happy to arrange for you to have some demo access to this product to save you needing to keep up with me in terms of the demo time frames that we have here at the moment. Please do just shout and I can arrange for you to have some access for you to explore this in your own time. For now, I'm going to go through this process and say maybe, I don't know, I get stuck at this question. I have no idea what the answer to this question might be. So I'm going to go and ask for some help on that front. So I'm going to stop where I am. I'm going to save my changes. 1 second. Save my changes. I don't think Jess is that's not very helpful. Jess, could I have my charger, please? Thank you. Sorry, guys. I should have brought that down with me and I didn't. So I've saved my changes and I'm going to reassign this to someone else to provide that support. So reassign the task. I'm going to pick this person. And I'm going to say to them, can you help me? This DPIA. Wonderful. We're now not going to lose each other halfway through. Great. Right. Can you help with this DPIA? I could have asked a more specific question, but we'll go with something general for now. So you'll see here my conversation building over here on the right-hand side, and it's now assigned to this person. Not expecting that person to hang around waiting all day for stuff to be assigned to them, obviously. We have email notifications that are going out from the product. So here this one is. Open that up and you can see here that Leanne is asking for some help with this DPIA. And I follow the link below and it would take me to that DPIA to provide that support. Maybe though I just know the answer to this question that she's asked me and I don't need to log in and do that. I can just reply to this email with my response. The information you need is here, and maybe I attach an attachment to help that on its way. That will attach, and then you send it in the same way you send it, but any other email in the world. This is not a specific email application of any sort. It's just your own email inbox that you would be using on a day-to-day basis for work. Mainly though, you're probably going to log in to provide that support directly. So let's do that. And this is the kind of collaborative aspect of the product. You can have and invite other people to come into your DPIAs to provide you with support. So here's the same notification. I'm not Leanne anymore. I'm this information asset owner, and I'm going to come into Leanne's form. I can see here she's doing a great job of completing that DPIA. And I'm going to answer the question. That was the one that she asked me to do, kind of job done. Maybe at that point I'd sign it back to Leanne. Leanne would be collaborative and go around the houses asking for any input that she needs as many times as she needs to. For purposes of the demo, we'll just carry on. So we're kind of halfway through our template at the moment, filling in these questions. Example here again of where the kind of this particular version of the product is one that we focus at public sector organisations. We have other flavours for different industries. But this one here, our feedback from those IG experts that whilst you might see something like consent at the top of these sorts of lists, actually that's one of the last things that they want to rely on. So it's more likely to be something like public tasks. So just by reordering those lists, we found that the engagement and the responses that we got back from non-IG experts were just different and much better in terms of quality. So we'll go with that as an answer. And we're nearly at the last couple of steps. Again, please don't feel like you need to read all these questions as we go. I'm very happy to leave anyone that wants it with some demo access to explore this in their own time. Last section of the process then, identification of risks. As you would expect, we have all the guidance that you would want to kind of give in the production of these risks. This is a manual data entry that you see in front of you at the moment, but we have in our kind of up and coming release, we have automated risk generation. It's one of the features that the collaborating organisations have really advocated for since the conception of this product. It's essentially where the product is looking at the answers that you've given in the DPIA template, and then is proactively suggesting to you a series of risks and mitigations that are sensible based on the way that you've completed the rest of this form. So at this point, it would say, based on how you've answered this form, we can see that there are 10 potential risks and mitigations that you want to look at. There obviously may well be others that you supplement that with. But out of those 10, the user will go, great, risk 1 to 5 are perfect, drop those in. Maybe risk 6 to 9 need a bit of editing just to bring them up to being properly relevant. And maybe the last one isn't relevant, so kind of ditch it. So once you've used your automated risks, you then supplement with your manual risk entry, which is what you see here, following all the guidance and completing this section on risks, including what your raising action is. Again, just these small changes, subtle changes in language, really helping to get those better quality answers from individuals. So not using things like mitigation as a term, because we found that many users didn't actually understand what that meant. So changing that to reduce or eliminate the risk, we found that it rapidly improved the quality of the responses that we got. On what date is the action going to be taken? And then your likelihood after you've mitigated, hopefully not catastrophic anymore. And then your overall risk score there automatically generating for you based on a 5x5 matrix. You then add as many more risks as you need to until you're kind of complete in that regard. So at that point, we've been collaborative in the production of our DPIA. We've been around the houses, we know it's complete and it's of great quality because we've followed all of those pieces of guidance. We may well then want to involve our DPO. So let's go through what that might look like. So you'd be reassigning it to your DPO for them to provide their input. Obviously, that's, by the way, that is the email that we replied with from our email account. So that's been landed back into the platform. So we've got that as a reference. We'd assign this to the DPO and maybe have some sort of conversation with them about the DPIA in here. But largely their role in the process is to come in and maybe make some recommended changes. They would be selecting that as an option. Or maybe it's that they recommend that this process stops. They really don't like it. Or it may be a recommendation to sign off. So you would, let's go ahead and select that one. Need to assign that to the data protection officer. And there's my data protection officer. In progress is fine. So now you have in your list your screening questions followed by your full DPIA. And now you have your recommendation to sign off, which needs to be completed by the DPO. So the DPO would be coming in at this point, reviewing their DPIA, making that decision and either providing their recommendation to sign off or not. And then finally, the system kind of sends out those notifications to say, well, that's all happened. Isn't that great? We've produced our DPIA, and you'd be looking to kind of change your statuses upwards to signed off or otherwise, whatever the decision that was made. Conscious of time, so I'll speed through quickly the last few bits. This is the review, how we're kind of driving reviews. So before you're allowed to leave your DPIA, you need to put in the date in the future that you want to come back and review that. So I'll put today's date as an example. That then flags that as being due for review, which automatically triggers the system to start sending out those email reminders well in advance of that date to remind the people that are responsible for reviewing it that date is coming up. You'll also notice on your dashboard that you'll have your own section here of everything that's your responsibility to review at whatever point in the future. Last but not least, a feature specifically designed for our non-IG experts. So for those that had maybe never done a DPIA before on that particular subject, we have internal and external searches. So our internal search gives you your kind of own DPIAs, gives you everything inside the organisation, but then external search contains DPIAs from other organisations that are using this product to kind of gives you a library essentially of some great examples of DPIAs to go and look at and take a steer from. As a non-IG expert, it's been so valuable, I know, to our customers that are using the product at the moment. I had an example just the other day from Leeds, City of Leeds, where they're wanting to do a DPIA on Microsoft Teams, not something they've done before. They're able to jump over into external search and have a search through the DPIAs that are in there from other organisations that have already done theirs, and even look to reuse a DPIA from another organisation, or at least take a steer from it. That's the product as a whole. I'm going to very quickly go through the business case before we take some sort of questions on this more broadly. So the business case, we didn't produce the business case for this ourselves at all. It was produced by the collaborating organisations that designed Dapium within the public sector. So they were saying that they're kind of, I guess, analog is the best way to describe it. The analog process for DPIAs that they were operating at the time was that the average salary of the individual across those organisations where the bulk of the heavy lifting was falling to for the production of a DPIA was about the 45k mark. They then have, on average, number of hours that they can work in a year, just over 1,600. And on average, they were producing just over 23 DPIAs per person per year, which gave them a cost for their production of a DPIA at just shy of £2,000. We then implemented Dapium, rerun this exercise again, keeping the parameters the same to give you worst case scenario. But actually, as I said, that this product is designed to be used by non-IG experts, you might expect this to be a more generalist staff member, and therefore potentially a lower salary. Maybe, maybe not. That will be seen. But keeping the parameters the same, they're actually able to do 65 DPIAs per person per year, and then that takes that down to more like £700 per DPIA in terms of that cost to the business. Savings, first slide minus second slide, it's about a 64% saving per DPIA and just over £1,200 per DPIA saving. Pricing, again, we're incredibly transparent as well about how we do our pricing. Our public sector pricing is 9,500 plus VAT, and private sector being 15,000 plus VAT per annum. Those prices are all inclusive. There is no additional charges anywhere for anything on that front. Unlimited number of DPIAs, unlimited number of users, training, service level agreements, everything that you would expect from that. We also offer discounts for organisations that are associated with the collaborating organisations. So if you're a member of the IRMS, we have discounts for you there as well as anyone affiliated with the likes of the Greater Manchester groups or London Office of Technology Innovation. So do check out our website, that's all documented on there as well. So we've done the DPIA stuff. We've moved on now to thinking about the other elements of IG, and kind of hence why our partnership with Inform You Solutions, because they have the offering of their information assurance register. We've developed an information sharing agreement module, which works in a very similar way to the DPIAs. It's collaborative in terms of its production, but it's all centered around how you would kind of get that sign off and production of an information sharing agreement. So that's our most recent module that we have developed. We're then moving on, as I said, to kind of integration or development of information assurance registers and ROPAs as well. So much kind of broader suite of IG elements coming over the next few weeks. That's everything from me. Is there any questions from anyone, or for kind of either myself or Ren?
I'm unmuted here.
Lovely. Please do feel free to either drop those in chat or unmute yourselves. So a quick look on chat. I don't think there is anything in there at the moment, which is absolutely fine. Oh, here we go. Sorry, thanks for the presentation. Lovely. that's all fine. So we can send those recordings over to anyone that wants those. So anyone that does want to have demo access, please do just give us a shout and we can sort that out and arrange that for you. I'll put our contact details up on the screen once more for anyone that needs them. Both myself and Ren are there. Lovely. Both of our websites, either dapian.uk or Ren, your website being
informu-solutions.com. Under redesign and redevelopment. So 4 weeks time, everything new will be unveiled.
Great. Lots of information on either websites or our LinkedIn accounts as well. Ren is absolutely prolific on LinkedIn. It's great to see some of the stuff that he puts out. Otherwise, you've got our contact details there. Many thanks for joining us this afternoon, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon and evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Let me just get not sharing anymore.
And then there were two.
It was just
Marvellous. I think lovely and streamlined and perfect.
yes, and on time.
And on time. Yeah.
Right, super. Cool.
I'm glad you gave me that warning because I'd have whistled away for another 40 minutes.
I know what I'm like because I can get that. I set a timer on my phone and it goes off at me if I don't. If I'm at my 5-minute mark, so I thought I better let you know, otherwise.
Brilliant. So we'll do something else, but maybe a completely different kind of theme related to CPIAs, if you like.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And I'll progress further. So I can hear an echo. It's a bit weird. I'll progress further the try a DPIA. What sort of pricing is that? Just out of interest. Sector organisation. We're going to run you a DPIA process.
So at the moment on our website, it outlines, so for public sector organisations, it's £2,500 for 10 DPIAs.
Okay.
So, I mean, I could probably look to do a cheaper option just for that purpose.
And then they could keep they basically pay that each year.
Yeah.
Like, well, I mean, I can have a think for 10 relevant DPIAs. I need to work it out more in my mind, but yeah.
I mean, I could probably do something for around about the maybe 1.5 mark.
Because what I'd like to do is come up with this set of DPIAs they need to run. So whether it's 5 or whether it's 10, so they're actually buying something and actually doing it, and we drive them through that process.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
All right, I'll be in touch. Lovely. And when this is all over, I'll come down and visit your nice new offices.
Yeah, come see our offices.
I can get to like Winchester by train from Bath quite easily. So.
Oh yeah.
I can drive, but then no one could take me out for a drink if I drive.
No, exactly.
Well, if I come by train.
Precisely. Yeah, I mean, if you, Botley is a station that's, to be fair, there are no train stations anywhere near the office, but we, either myself or Jess, run past Botley station, which is on that Winchester line. So, we can spin you up from Botley.
Oh, something like that. Yeah. Or if business takes us to London, we can hook up there and have a nice lunch.
Yeah, definitely. Cool.
You can see my head is starting to plan from next Tuesday or Monday or whenever it is that I'm going to be out and about working commerce in the way I like to work commerce.
Yeah. Probably caged animals are any longer. It's just
that's it. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Leanne. Thank you very much. And I will see you very soon. Take care. Bye.